following is a GNC podcast production. Welcome to Geek Addicts, a pop culture podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Geek Addicts, the pop culture podcast. I don't know how to start this show, so I'm just winging it again. I'm Bill, and this is Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing all right. Just tired. Finally on vacation, so
There you go.
that's good. Yeah, maybe one of these days I'll figure out how to start one of these.
I think you're doing all right.
The best was when I ended 3DO like earlier this week, and I did the GNC ending, and I was like, "Fuck, oh, well. I'll just keep it."
That's looking funny.
Yeah, it's been one of those weeks. It's been a just crazy month. Just dealing with all the last minute Christmas shoppers and
all the psychos out there.
Yeah, making sure I got all my gifts all put together. I got to do that tomorrow, because my plans for tomorrow are we got 2 more days before Christmas. I'm gonna literally do nothing tomorrow, but get presents ready, relax. I might go out for a coffee and to get gas. That's probably all I'm doing on tomorrow.
Yeah, we got to do a little bit of last minute shopping, and then we got to try to get like the vast majority of stuff that we need to get done for Christmas tomorrow, because on Christmas Eve we have like a breakfast thing at my aunt's house, and then after that my son gets home like pretty early in the afternoon that day, so we got to make sure that we get all our ducks in a row ahead of time.
Yeah, it's that busy time of the year.
Yeah,
it's both a great time of the year, but also like one of the most stressful, annoying times of the year.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Other than that, though, nothing too crazy is going on. Just it was utterly like laughable, just like how nothing. Like I was at work today for like 6 hours, and legit nothing important got done today.
Yeah, I get that.
Like I spent most of my day just sitting at my desk doing like busy work, just trying to look busy because I didn't feel like doing anything else.
I spent half the day sanding plates.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, yeah. Thankfully, we should be on a pretty easy stretch now the rest of the year, and then we can start 2024 and see if it's any better. I doubt it. But.
Yeah. Well, it seems like everyone says that every year, and then we end up wishing for a better year at the end of it anyway.
It seems like since like 2012, it seems like every year is literally like, this is our year. It's like, this year sucked. Can't wait for next year.
That'd be about right. That's the year I graduated, so.
I was a senior still that year. I had senioritis so bad in high school, it wasn't even funny.
I bet.
I had senioritis as a junior, so. Yeah, I was done with high school like halfway through my junior year.
I get that.
And I never looked back.
I think I remember like 5 people from high school.
I remember like people from high school, but like I have no desire to go back to that life.
Oh God, no. And like there's just some random names that float around in my head, and I'm like, wait, who was that?
Yeah. Sometimes you'll get like a person. You'll see like people on like Facebook or something that you're like, oh, I haven't talked to them in over a decade. I wonder how they're doing. But you're not going to actually reach out because you really don't care that much.
No, not really.
Yeah. Apparently we're supposed to have a 5-year reunion, even though we're bordering on 7 years now because scheduling and stuff. But
I'm sure COVID played a part.
Yeah, that's true. COVID kind of screwed up a lot of stuff there for a couple of years.
See, I just don't get the point of 5-year reunions. Like I maybe like, back in the day before the internet, it made sense to do stuff like that. But like, in the age of social media and all that, like there's really no point. Like maybe like a a 10 or even a 20-year reunion would make sense, but
Now
everyone's
it's
still
just now it's just an excuse to drink.
yeah,
That's
everyone you
basically
care
it.
about, you're already on Facebook with, so or whatever social media platform you use. So there's really no need to have a reunion.
I mean, some people like to go to those things just to like gloat at how successful they are. So
Yeah, well,
I mean,
people like that don't need an excuse to gloat.
I know, but they like to do it in front of people. Yep. But anyways, so today's episode is actually it was kind of impromptu because of this week was kind of a scheduling hell, and it made our original idea kind of not viable at the moment. So we decided we're gonna do a follow up to I think it's like 2 episodes ago now. Uh,
Something like that.
when we talked about the Scott Pilgrim franchise. At the time of that recording, I had not seen the anime adaptation. Well, since then, I have finally gotten around to watching it, and I figured, well, it's fresh in my head. We might as well talk about it.
And it being our last minute decision, rewatched the show again today.
It's a quick watch. It goes by really fast. I finished it in a day, so
Yeah, well, I mean, this is probably the third watch I've had in the past month. I think it's only been out for like a month, so yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't been long. I honestly should have watched it during the previous episode. I just didn't. Scheduling's a crazy thing sometimes.
Yeah, it happens.
But yeah, like this anime came out of nowhere, shocked everybody, and I'm still processing it to this day. Like at this point,
Yeah,
not in a bad way, just in a like furious way, I guess you could say.
I don't even know if I knew it was coming up. Like,
so I knew an anime was in the works for a while, like because I know like Brian Lee O'Malley, the author of the series, he had mentioned it like previous that he was trying to get something developed, but it was always kind of just a thing that kind of happened, but you never really nothing ever came of it. And then last year it finally gets announced. And from what I've heard, the big hold up with making the proper announcement was they wanted to get all the voice actors confirmed before they said anything. Because apparently, because we mentioned it in the previous episode, but literally almost all of the voice cast from the film adaptation reprised their roles for this anime. There was a few exceptions here and there just for logistical reasons, but everyone reprised their roles, and I believe like Edgar Wright said in an interview that like pretty much everybody said yes almost immediately, but there was so much like legal red tape mumbo jumbo they had to jump through that it took so long to actually get everything confirmed before they could officially announce it.
That's about right. Do you know if Bill Hader was the narrator again?
I'm not sure. It sounded similar.
I tried looking it up earlier, but it's also like such a small role that I don't even know if he would be credited because, I mean, the narrator didn't really have much to say in the series.
Yeah, he's not listed on the he's not really listed on the any of the credits, so I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, it's kind of unclear. What's interesting is though, when the movie first came out, a lot of the actors in it, they were well known, but most of them were kind of like, this is before they got super big.
Yeah.
Like Chris Evans in particular, like he wasn't really, I think the film actually predates the first Captain America.
Yeah, I think by like a year, maybe two.
Yeah, like there was a ton of actors in this film that were known, but like none of them were huge yet. I think the biggest actor at the time was probably Michael Cera.
And even he only had like the two major roles that he had done before that.
Yeah, and honestly, that actually hurt him more at the time because he was so typecast into that style of role at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like interesting, like how I think Anna Kendrick might have been the biggest actor at the time. I don't know. I really don't know. I know she got much bigger after, along with like Brie Larson and a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
But going back before we get into the actual anime itself, going back a little bit, um, this is interesting because despite some common misconceptions, this is actually an anime. It's not a anime styled Western project. Like it was developed by an actual Japanese studio, had a Japanese director, like the full on
Yeah,
like Japanese crew. So it is officially an anime. It's kind of like the Ruby anime. Like it's made by a
yeah,
Japanese studio and everything. It's just based off a Western property.
yeah. Well, that's why I don't know why a lot of people get confused about that. All you gotta do is listen to the opening theme song, and you're like, okay, this is an anime. I mean,
Yeah,
I understand to the level of like the animation style doesn't look anime. It definitely looks like a Western cartoon, but I mean, they kind of did that on purpose because that's the way the comic looks. So,
yeah. But I mean, even the comics always had an anime-esque look to them.
mhm.
But like, because it's like you'll get confusing ones. Like the Castlevania animated series is technically a Western animation, despite it looking exactly like an anime.
I didn't even know that.
It was made by the same studio that did the Fairly Odd Parents, believe it or not.
That's hilarious.
But it's like it looks super anime.
Isn't it like
Um,
super dark?
yeah, it's pretty dark.
That's wicked funny.
uh, so another fun thing about this anime adaptation is when it was first announced, they did some massive trolling on their part. Like Brian Lee O'Malley in particular made many claims that this was going to be a faithful adaptation of the book series into anime. Like he said this on multiple live streams because I believe the goal was they wanted the twist so just for forewarning, this spoiler wall like up now. You haven't seen the series, turn back. We'll get to it. You can come back after you watch it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think the whole thing is they were trying to lead people on like into thinking, expecting this like true to text adaptation for the most part. And it's funny because for the most part, episode 1 is pretty spot on
Yeah.
until the end.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm
Uh,
curious what your reaction was when that happened.
so watching it, I was kind of like going through the entire thing. I noticed like it was pretty note for note the same as the books. There was a few little minor things they cut out, like they changed Ramona's job to be a Netflix delivery girl as an obvious joke on the fact that it's on Netflix.
Yeah.
Um, they also changed a few jokes, like the Sonic joke when Scott talks to Ramona at the
Mhm.
party. And then the other thing I noticed is there was a few cut scenes, like there was the scene of Scott talking to his younger sister Stacy on the phone where she criticizes him for dating a high schooler. That's not present.
Yeah, it seems like they kind of skipped around a lot of the early stuff that was in the comics and the movie. It's like
Yeah,
they
it
kind of
felt
just they kept in like the bare bones just to kind of like yeah, like you're saying, kind of trick you into thinking it's going to be the same.
yeah, just a more streamlined kind of adaptation.
Mhm.
Because another scene is when they're at the nightclub for Sex Bomb's a big gig. Um, there's a subplot that was completely removed for this, and I think it's removed from the movie as well because it's really just a joke. It's a Wallace joke more than anything, where Wallace steals Stacy's boyfriend.
Oh yeah, no, that was in the movie.
Was it in? Okay, I forget. I know it wasn't here, and it was in the game too, which makes it even funnier
Yeah, I know.
that they caused that joke happened. I think that's a running gag. I think in the books is that Wallace steals Stacy's boyfriends all the time.
Yeah, because I think in the movie she was like, "Not again, Wallace."
Yeah, which is really funny. They cut that out of here though because it really isn't important to anything.
Right.
Um,
Plus, Wallace gets plenty of chance to shine anyway.
yeah, Wallace honestly gets more attention here than he does in the movie or books, and Kieran Culkin gets a lot of work this time around.
No kidding.
So the big difference is, so they actually do this cool scene where they introduce the League of Evil X's, which was completely original, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. They're going to expand on them a little bit, which I was both right and wrong at the same time by making that assumption.
Yeah.
So it happens about the same. Sex Bomb's about to start playing, and then Matthew Patel shows up to fight Scott. and then literally goes in for the first punch, and there's a brief cut, and then the next thing you see is just money falls to the ground. It's like Matthew Patel won, Scott's dead. What?
Yeah, right.
And it's such a dramatic end to the episode, and it literally just goes with like it literally just cuts there and it goes to credits, and you're like, what?
And I love in that scene how like it's going through all the characters where it does that like super anime thing where it like flashes to each person individually and they're all gasping, and then it goes to what's her name, Julie, and she's just like,
Yeah. Well, that also is, in hindsight, is supposed to tip you off into thinking maybe something's going on, because this show likes to really mess with your expectations a bit.
See, I didn't get that at all because at this point, you know, I've read the comics, I've watched the movie. Like, I know Julie hates his guts, so I just figured it was like you're dead. Like,
Well, we'll get into it later, but like, there's some scenes later on that makes you wonder. Like, there's obviously more to this than meets the eye.
yeah,
But episode 2, I thought, was the most interesting episode, because this is where shit, like, so from here on out, completely different story. Like, nothing's the same anymore. It's literally, the best way to describe it is it's literally an alternate universe where Scott died and like everything changed from that.
yeah. It's like a weird like I tried to explain it to you. It's like a sequel, but also like an alternate universe version of the story. Like it's a really complicated kind of.
Yeah, it's basically like you change one event and it changes everything. And what's funny is, so the whole funeral for Scott goes on, which is really hilarious how no one really seems that upset he's dead.
Right. Except for Knives, but she gets over it pretty quick.
Yeah, Knives gets over Scott's death very quick. Even during the funeral, because of course Envy Adams shows up, Scott's ex, as the text says, the big one.
Yeah.
And she literally hijacks the funeral to perform a concert. And then she leaves, and literally everyone just ditches the funeral.
Yeah, I think Ramona is the only one left after that.
Yeah, which kind of leaves this speculation that even Stacy and the parents ditched to go see Envy,
which is ridiculous.
Yeah, even Steven Stills and him apparently.
Yeah, that's wild.
But yeah, so we have that whole scene, but then we cut to the League of Evil X's, where they've all assembled together, and they make a big point of like, Gideon's basically like, I didn't call you guys here, I don't know what's going on. And it's revealed that Matthew Patel is the one that arranged this, which this is interesting to me just from the fact that Matthew Patel was like the most like whatever of the like the original like 7X's. Like because he literally shows up in the comics, gets defeated like in 3 seconds, and then he's just gone the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And I think the cool thing was this actually gave his actor, I'm gonna butcher this because he's got a his name's a bit hard to pronounce. It's Satya Baba, I think his name is.
Yeah, it's a difficult name. It's like one of those hard to say names, like Aziz Ansari. I only know his name because I've watched a number of things he's in.
Yeah. So apology. The police are coming for us. Oh Lord. it's the weekend before Christmas, so craziness is going on. But yeah, it's so apologies for probably mispronouncing his name, but he is one of the better actors in the original film. Like he completely steals that role.
Oh yeah.
And he's gone in 3 seconds. Like he legit has no screen time at all. So for this, he gets to straight up like steal the show, because one of the key things that like it actually reveals how dumb the X's plan kind of was, where like he wins the fight and like he thinks, oh, this means I win back Ramona, and she doesn't give a shit. She's like, no, right. He just moves on, and he's like, what? I don't win. So then they all call out Gideon for this, and Gideon's like, well, of course not. It was supposed to be so I would win in the end. You guys are just my pawns. And then you get this whole like fight scene where Matthew Patel challenges Gideon basically for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Gideon thinks that he's a surefire win, so he bets legit everything in his empire to Matthew Patel if he loses. And it's actually a pretty good fight, like, because the whole time you think Gideon's gonna wipe the floor with him, but he actually like ends up defeating him, and it's like, oh, so the big bad is immediately taken care of, and now we're completely in a new territory from here.
Yeah, it's completely defeated by like who was supposed to be the small fry.
Yeah, by the because he later reveals that defeating Scott gave him the willpower to actually overthrow Gideon.
Yeah,
and it's hilarious because like at that point all the X's basically just like ditch, and they're like, yeah, whatever, we're gone. And it's Gideon's basically in ruin. Like at this point, he's got nothing left. And from there, then we get this kind of like, we cut to Ramona's having a dream, and she's in the subspace highway, and she can hear Scott, which implies that he's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Which I kind of saw coming, because there's no way they'd kill the main character off in his own series.
True. But in a lot of ways, I feel like this is like Ramona is more the main character in this one. And that's kind of a big reason why I like it, is because it really, really puts a lot of focus on her. And like, because one of the things that I noticed is in the comics and in the movie, it's kind of like, yeah, the whole thing is to Scott trying to beat all the X's to win over Ramona, but also at the same time, he's kind of getting closure with all of his exes and stuff. And in this version of the story, it's the other way around. It's Ramona getting closure with all her exes, which is kind of cool.
What's interesting too is what do you think of all the performances from the returning actors?
Some of them I liked more in this, and some of them I like the movies more. And it's not even necessarily the performances that made me like this less than the movie. I think part of it is like, for instance, specifically Kieran Culkin. I personally liked him more in the movie, but that's just because I feel like he's also a very like physical actor, if that makes sense. Like his like he has a lot of like movements and motions that go with his acting style and stuff. And I just feel like, I mean, he did a great job, don't get me wrong. I like him as Wallace better in live action. But then there was people like honestly, I liked Lucas Lee a lot more in this version.
Chris Evans is just a dork the entire time.
It's great. I love his whole episode 4. His whole episode is one of my favorites.
Another one that I really liked is actually the main characters. Michael Cera Michael Cera was good in the movie, but I think he played a little bit too much into the awkward side of Scott and not so much the comic persona, which was more of a goofball.
Oh, he's a super goofball in this one.
Yeah, like I think they nailed his characterization down like much better. Also, Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Ramona, like she was okay in the movie, but like she's kind of just there. She was much better in the animated series by far.
Agreed.
She had so much personality.
I think this is the most likable version of Ramona.
You might have to read the comics again, because she is very. So once you like read the comics once, it's actually really good to read them again, because then you'll get a better understanding for a lot of things. And Ramona is actually very deep in the comics.
Yeah.
This is actually, I think, the perfect version of her because it combines the best elements from both. Another one that was really good, I really enjoyed. Well, I mean, I enjoyed most of the characters. I really liked Mark Webber as Stephen Stills.
Yeah,
just
great.
Another bizarre version of Stephen Stills that's not like the comics, by the way. Well, he's like the comics, but he's also not, because the entire subplot of him coming out is completely removed
again.
But I think I actually read a theory on this, and it actually kind of made sense. The reason why it doesn't come out in the anime, this is completely a fan theory, it's not confirmed, but like in the anime, he's already broken up with Julie because they had gotten back together in the comics after the first volume at some point. They never get back together in this. and because of that, she doesn't make him so miserable. He goes gay this time around. Because that's kind of like the running joke. She's such an awful bitch that like it just makes him. He just goes gay at the end of the episode. That's at least the theory, anyways. But
Yeah,
if anything, he's more like just into the music this time around.
for sure. One of my favorite scenes with him in this version was when Knives first started messing around on the bass. And he just like panics. He's like, I don't like change. And he just dips.
He just goes out the window. That's a great scene too, is the whole Knives look. So Knives actually, I think, has like one of the best character derailments in this anime.
For sure.
Where because she did the actor Ellen Wong, she did a very good job in the movie. Like she definitely Knives' characterization in the movie was a little weird. Like they just didn't have it down right. In this, they got it like perfect, but also like they kind of addressed a lot of the problems with her character in the comics, and they actually made her basically like do something like relevant. And what that was she basically joins Sex Bomb during Scott's absence, and like they find out she's kind of like a musical prodigy.
Yeah, right. She learns bass and piano within a span of hours.
I love the bass one because it's like her and Kim will jam like on the bass and drums for what appears to be like 10 minutes, but then it cuts to like Kim being like, how long have you been playing the bass? And she's like, what time did we start practicing? And it's like, oh, 4 hours. And Kim's like, I'm late for work, and just immediately leaves. And then we cut to the movie store, because at this point Ramona knows he's alive, and she's going on this like journey to like try and figure out what happened. Basically, she goes to the back to the nightclub, and she pays off the janitor to see the security footage, which reveals that he wasn't killed, he was kidnapped, basically.
By someone using a vegan portal.
Yeah, because vegans are just have superpowers in this universe. Don't question it.
Whatever.
But during that, she's going across like all these different people, and she first talks to Julie to get information, which is one of my favorite scenes, because like they really played up how much Julie just swears all the time in this like anime.
Yeah, I loved in that scene too how like Stacy's just back at work, just doing her normal thing. Like your brother died like yesterday.
That's actually
she's just chilling at work, like goofing around.
That's one of my favorite lines in the entire fucking anime is Julie keeps swearing, and then Stacy's like, Julie, we have fucking customers. Stop swearing, or something like that.
For real.
Speaking of characters in this stuff, freaking Stacy gets like no screen time in this at all.
Yeah, you know, they go all through all the trouble to get Anna Kendrick, and she's barely in it.
She's got like 10 minutes of like work in this entire thing.
For real.
Which is kind of a bummer, but whatever. She's not really important to anything relevantly.
Yeah. And since they didn't put a whole lot of attention on the whole Scott dating a 17-year-old thing, like that was kind of like her biggest role in the movie, at least, was just giving him shit for that.
Yeah, most of her appearances in the comics too were just messing with Scott or being like a background character.
Yeah.
Apparently Brian Lee O'Malley doesn't, if he said in an interview that if he could remove any character from the series, it would probably be Stacy.
That makes sense.
Well, a lot of it has to do with apparently the storyline is based off of is very very loosely based off of his own life. And Stacy apparently is based off of his actual sister, who was also named Stacy, and he was like, yeah, I think I could have been a little more creative there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's barely in it. But going back to like the subplot, so we then get to the overarching plot of this anime is basically the exes all get redemption arcs, and Ramona basically ties up all the loose ends she had with pretty much all the exes, which is interesting.
Yeah, and like throughout the course of all of it, she kind of like learns a lot more about herself and like what she wants out of life and stuff, which is really cool. Like the way that it ends with Ramona is just wild.
Yeah, well, like my favorite the first like X that really gets screen time is Roxy, and we actually get backstory for Roxy, which wasn't really a thing in anything.
Right.
Like they kind of just made more the joke of Ramona having a sexy face than actual any real meaningful relationship there. And what I find interesting is like this whole scene is great because it's an entire fight that goes down in the movie store, which they actually make a joke about how like Netflix is killing movie stores.
Yeah. And then like, it was the fight scene itself was crazy too, because like I mean, obviously the whole like subspace highway, all that crazy shit. So I guess I can't be too surprised, but they were like fighting in and out of movies.
Well, my favorite too is like the fight starts breaking out, and Kim's coworker Holly's just like, "Fuck this! I'm taking my 15," and just leaves.
Yeah, she's like, "You ruined my movie."
Well, because there's a point where like they're in the movie, and Kim pauses the movie and rewinds it, and Roxy pops on. She's like, "Stop that now!" That was a
There
big
it
truck.
is.
So yeah, they have the whole fight going on, and they literally destroy this like video store.
Yeah, the place gets like annihilated. Yeah.
Yeah, the place gets annihilated, but then they have this big like when they finally tire themselves out, they have this like big discussion, basically being like, "Yeah, we made poor decisions," which is great.
Yeah.
And then they just make up, and basically the whole thing is basically busy today.
Yeah.
The whole thing is basically
all over the place.
the whole thing is basically just Ramona trying to confirm whether or not they would be like players in Scott's disappearance.
Right. And she's kind of just
is
going through her whole list to see, who's behind it all.
And what's funny is at this point in the series, Scott and Ramona aren't even really together. They had one date, and that was about it.
Yeah. Which, yeah, that is pretty wild. So it's crazy that she's going to this extent, but I don't know. I guess it just goes to show the level of the story,
They said it. They said it. There was sparks.
Yeah.
I love that running joke.
Sparks are real?
Yeah, I love. Oh, okay. We'll get to that. But there was a whole. So the next whole scene is basically revolving around Lucas Lee and his whole. Well, oh, we forgot about Gideon, because Gideon's backstory, subplot happens here very briefly.
Oh yeah, when you find out that his real name is Gordon Goose, that he's
Gordon
from
Goose.
Canada.
That was a fan theory for years, that Gideon wasn't his real name and that he was actually hiding his real identity. So that was an interesting like play that they came up with.
I know that he was just like a total geek in high school, and everyone made fun of him and shit.
Yeah, the subplot with him and Julie was a little out of nowhere, but sure, why not?
They're a good couple, though. I mean, shit.
I mean, they're both evil, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
That'll come back later, but following that is like we get the whole like Lucas Lee arc with like the well first we got to talk about young Neil. We have to talk about young Neil for a minute.
Oh yeah, the sleep paralysis demons.
Speaking of actors that fucking stole the show, Johnny Simmons like fucking nails his part in this entire series.
Yeah, it made him like so much more dumb in this series, but it was great.
I mean, he was pretty dumb in the books as well, but I love how he's basically just like, I'm writing a screenplay. I wrote nothing. No. So then sleep paralysis demon. He wakes up and he finds his entire screenplay written. He's like, I must be a writing genius.
There's the when he was riding around the golf cart, he's like, in America, these are called Mario Karts.
And then she's like, I don't think that's true, considering I'm from America.
Right.
Oh, then in Japan. He just wanted to drive the golf cart. That's really all he cared about.
Yeah.
That is funny though, because the whole joke is that she's trying to find Lucas Lee, who's he's filming a film, but apparently he's becoming unhireable because he's the jock dude bro attitude doesn't work anymore.
Right.
And so she goes to the movie set, and I love when she opens his trailer and he's dressed as Scott, and she just goes, what? Like, no.
One of my favorite running jokes in the series is how he and Todd later on we do the we need to talk about Scott Pilgrim. Well, I'm Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, and it's funny how like he gets into this whole fight with the paparazzi at one point, and they go through this whole like fight scene arc thing. Also, Wallace literally gets the guy playing him fired because he's just a better actor at himself.
Yeah, he's just heckling him in the background.
He's like, "Hey, you suck," and the guy's like, "Who are you to criticize me?" "Oh, I'm Wallace Wells."
He just method, eh?
Yeah, I also love that the director's name is Howard Wrong. No, not Howard Wrong. Shit. I just had a brain melt for a minute there. Edgar Wrong is a parody of Edgar Wright.
Oh yeah. Who played the director? Because I know that I think he was in like Lilo and Stitch or something.
So the director Kevin McDonald, who is he was Pastor Dave in That 70s Show.
That's right.
And he was he was Pleakley in Lilo and Stitch. That's funny.
Yeah, the one-eyed one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew I recognized his voice.
I know. I noticed it too, but I didn't make that connection. That's funny. Yeah, he hams it up the entire time, which is pretty funny.
That's pretty classic him.
But there's like a whole like subplot of like just like the paparazzi shows up and they're like fighting off the paparazzi, and eventually Lucas Lee decides, you know what, I'm done with this. I can't get the job. My agent fired me anyways, and he escapes the studio in Ramona's bag, which is funny.
Yeah.
Also, and Ramona has like.
Oh, right.
Oh, now you go ahead.
I was just gonna say I love that whole bit at the beginning of that episode where he's skating around with the whatever song going on.
Yeah. There's some interesting music in this that's like actual songs.
Oh yeah, the soundtrack is a bop. Like,
yeah, because there's like the Dead Kennedys song that plays during like his skateboarding scene is great.
Mm-hmm.
Like during the fight scene. And I love right at the end when after him and Ramona like make up and like get their closure, he's like immediately walking like now as an unemployed guy. And this kid like comes up like on his skateboard. You think it's gonna be this heartfelt moment, and then he just punches the kid away and steals his skateboard and just goes off.
That's awesome.
Because it's then implied that Todd showed up to take his place as an actor.
Yeah.
And the next episode is probably the most bizarre because this entire episode is basically one of those like pseudo documentary things.
Yeah, which I thought was really, really good for this particular episode. Like I thought it worked really well.
You know what my favorite part was? That like completely I didn't realize it until I saw the credits. You know who voiced the documentary narrator?
No.
It was Weird Al.
Was it really?
It was weird because I saw the credits. I'm like, Weird Al was in this? Like, who was Weird Al?
That's hilarious.
I looked it up and I'm like, he was the narrator the entire time.
Oh, and Finn Wolfhard played young Scott for like the 2 lines that young Scott had in the whole thing.
Yeah, during the flashback with Kim.
Yeah, which I thought was funny. It's like, oh, he went through the trouble to get him for 2 lines.
Well, apparently he was a massive Scott Pilgrim fan as a kid, so
that makes sense.
Well, I mean, he's still kind of a kid, but yeah, that was neat. Yeah, but this whole entire documentary scene is hilarious because Kieran Culkin steals this entire episode.
Oh yeah,
because there's an entire like running joke where now they have Todd Ingram playing Scott and Envy Adams playing Ramona, and Ramona's playing her stunt double,
which is freaking hilarious. And I love that they shift the whole stunt double battle over to this section rather than with just doing it again with Chris Evans.
Yeah, which was pretty funny. But they run into this issue of like they can't film a scene because Envy and Todd just keep making out every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So then Wallace is like, "Hey, what if you have me change it a little like this?" And they don't tell you what's going to happen, and then immediately it cuts and he's like, "All right, now Scott kiss Wallace," and it's like,
yeah.
What? And it's like immediately sparks start flying from Todd's eyes, and it's like, oh no. It's like I'm like, they are going in a very different direction here.
Oh yeah.
And then it becomes this entire running joke. And I love the interview sections too, because like the interview's like narrating them all. And when he's interviewing Ramona's like, oh, I just snuck in here to find out what happened with my to interrogate my ex-boyfriend to find out if my the guy I was seeing got kidnapped by vegan powers. And then she walks off, and it just cuts to the narrator going, what? Like, yeah, a whole bunch. I love the fact too that once Envy finds out what's going on with Todd, she literally goes to fight Wallace, and she's like, "You broke my boyfriend."
It was too funny.
And the entire thing just like goes to shit so fast, and like, and then it literally ends with like, Matthew Patel basically shows up and just shuts the entire thing down. He's like, "You're all fired. Get lost."
It's like this movie is slander, and I don't like it, and so I'm shutting it down.
And then he cuts to the narrator filming the documentary. He's like, "What are you doing? Filming one of these documentary things?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "No, we can't have that." And he just fucking kills him right there. But there is a nice plot of Knives and so there's a subplot with Knives and Steven Stills. They're writing show tunes now. Because don't you know bread makes you fat?
Yeah.
And they actually get a brief interview with Matthew Patel to propose an idea that they have, which is an interesting little subplot that's going on in the background. Now, I forget what happens next. It's
let's see. I think this is the part where Ramona. What's his name?
Right.
Lucas Lee goes to Gideon's house, or rather Julie's house, and they have their whole like cheesy montage together.
I love that scene.
Yeah, I love how much of a goober Gideon is in this show. Like,
yeah, how he the actor that plays him, who does a fucking phenomenal job, by the way.
Yeah.
What's his name? Jason Schwartzman. He fucking steals the show during this whole thing, but like that episode's great because it starts off with we get this cut of Gideon and he's literally just watching anime.
Yeah, like
with the most stereotypical like high school rom-com anime going on in the background.
Yeah, high school girl running to school with a piece of bread in her mouth, bumps into a dude, they start yelling at each other in Japanese.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. I love it though, because like he brings Lucas Lee over and he's like, "You want to be friends?"
Yeah.
And then they just start destroying Julie's house, doing all these fucking stupid things.
Yeah, and then she comes back and she's like, "I've been gone for an hour and a half." You're like, "Holy shit, that was an hour and a half." Like,
yeah, she's like, "I've been gone for an hour and a half. What did you do to my house?" Yeah, because then we cut to the whole Ramona and Julie scene, because there's more theories. Basically, the next two like suspects are Julie and Gideon. And I believe it's like immediately basically shut down that she's like, "Yeah, it wasn't us."
Yeah, she's like, "I wish it was us. This is boring as shit."
Yeah. And she's like, the whole joke, she's like, "What do you see in Gideon?" And she's like, "Oh, he's so hot when he plans."
Yeah, right.
But he's such a loser otherwise.
Yeah. So basically, by the end of the whole, like, her interrogating them, she comes to the conclusion, like, oh, it must be the twins because the robot's been everywhere.
Yeah, because they keep seeing that robot, and I love the reveal of why the robot's been everywhere later on, by the way.
Yeah, for real.
Because then we cut to everything's starting to come together now. They realize like the twins and the robot did something. They saw they found the metadata on the file of the script was written like at a time that should have been possible.
Yeah, it was like 12 years or 14 years in the future or something like that.
Yeah, like it was some crazy thing that was just impossible. And then of course the episode ends with the big reveal that Scott opens the door and he's like, "I'm back."
Yeah. I love young Neil's line. It's just like, this is my favorite part of every Who Did It where we find out who did it.
Yeah, and then Scott's like, "It was me," and it just ends there.
Yeah.
Because then the next episode is literally the only real episode that focuses solely on Scott.
Yeah, but we get double the Scott, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, we get Scott and Old Scott.
Who played Old Scott?
So Old Scott was played by, I know that voice because that voice is very familiar. He was voiced by Will Forte.
Will Forte. That sounds familiar. I need to see his face.
He was on Saturday Night Live from 2002 to 2010. He was on the sitcom Last Man on Earth. Oh, he created Last Man on Earth. That was his big thing.
Okay.
He was a producer for Third Rock from the Sun, That 70s Show.
I gotcha. All right.
He's done stuff, essentially.
He's been around.
But yeah, he plays Old Scott. And the future Toronto is weird because it looks both post-apocalyptic and futuristic at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna say I love the VR room. How it's just like
it's a virtual boy.
It's just a fucking virtual boy.
And all the little flashbacks like that he sees him in Ramona's life, and they're all like done virtual boy style as like the red and black.
It's super funny.
I love Scott's reaction to it too. He's like, "Oh, that's nice." He's like, "Oh, we get married." He's like, "Oh, and the honeymoon in Disney or whatever it was." And he's like, "Oh, what's this scene?" He's like, "Oh, that's not supposed to be, and that was added. I was supposed to take that out." And then it just cuts to the final scene, which is just divorce. It's like what?
Oh, jeez. Yeah,
and it's basically
revealed that the whole thing is like Old Scott, like, did some timey-wimey stuff to try to prevent Scott and Ramona from dating because he's all butthurt about being separated from her.
Yeah, which we find out isn't even what happened, but we'll get to that. My favorite part too is like the whole fact that like it's kind of in a meta sense, like this universe we're seeing is like the comic universe in the future.
Yeah.
And it's been basically where they're kind of writing that out now for this new universe that they've created.
It's really interesting.
I also like that he just hangs out with the twins because they just respawn for whatever reason.
Yeah, that fucking hurricane song they did together.
Yeah, I love the songs in this because they're all so bad but great.
For real. I don't know. It's just so much of like the soundtrack just I vibed with. And that particular scene was hysterical.
So one of the few actors who did not reprise their roles for this film was actually the twins, because their actors in the movie were native Japanese speakers and they didn't speak English.
Well, that explains why they didn't have any speaking lines.
Yeah, and they so they got one actor to do them for the anime. Apparently, Ryan Lee O'Malley tried really hard to get both of them back for the Japanese dub, but I'm not sure if that actually happened or not. But I like the fact that they're just chilling and making music now, and Scott's just a bum at this point with a beard.
Yeah.
and Wallace is married to a man from Nintendo.
And Scott still lives with him.
Yeah. I love the lot. I like the joke. Actually, this goes back to like the Ramona when Scott gets the DVD from her, and Scott explains that, "Oh, I just live with my gay roommate, and he gives me allowance every now and then." She's like, "So it's like a sugar daddy kind of thing?" Or
he's like, "Sugar what?"
Yeah. And then we cut to later on where like Wallace reveals that the house isn't actually owned by either of them, and he's like, "Oh, it's a sugar daddy kind of thing." It's like Wallace's husband works for Nintendo, and Scott's like, "Does that mean he gets all the games free?" And he's like, "That's not how it actually works." And he's like, "No, that's totally how it works." Just some goofy shit. And then
Explains
of course
the virtual boy room.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite references, just because it's like they had to have. So it's like the name is different. It's like Virtual Guy or something.
Yeah.
That must have been to get around Nintendo's trademarks because I doubt they paid Nintendo for that.
But then they also name drop Nintendo in the same episode.
That's true. I'll have to read into that because I'm not actually sure now.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
But then, of course, it cuts to basically Scott's not going to let him go back because his whole thing is like, no, I can't risk the future. I did this on purpose. Your life is going to get ruined. And it's like, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So then we cut to future Ramona, who I love the running joke that future Ramona like just says age, don't ask.
Yeah.
And we find future Ramona, and she's voiced by what's interesting is they gave Scott a different voice, but Ramona has the same voice.
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
I guess it works for the character though, because she had a more mature sounding voice anyways.
Yeah, I mean the show definitely puts more of a focus on Ramona anyway, so.
I like how she basically explains that he was basically just being himself, and like they didn't actually split up. He was just, she needed some space, and he went all fucking melodramatic over it, and that's why this whole thing happened.
Well, yeah, because it was another thing. Like he was trying to explain to regular Scott about like how bad it was. He's like, remember when we broke up with Envy? He's like, this is like 10 times worse than that.
Yeah,
but really, it was just him being dramatic.
Yeah, because that's just who Scott is. Which is actually interesting because I think it means this version of Scott has actually grown more than the comic one at this point.
Yeah.
But so they go through this whole thing, and basically Ramona explains her plot, where she was the one that went back in time and left the novel at young Neil's computer because she wanted to make sure this universe at least survived somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But she had to dumb it down for Scott so that he would be able to understand it.
So she condensed it into the movie, which I'm assuming is supposed to be a reference to the movie that came out in 2010.
That was the theory I had. I'm not sure, but that would be an awesome reference.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so then it's revealed that she basically explained that whole thing, and then she decides, all right, let's bring you back. And Scott's like, you have a time machine too? And she's like, yeah. Pulls out these roller skates. She's like, I made them out of an old DeLorean. I was like, that's a great line.
I love that she brings back the I don't know what that is in kilometers joke.
Oh, yeah. Because Canada, eh? But then they go back in time, and it cuts back to Scott being at the right where Scott came back, and then they kind of explain everything that's going on, and then you get the cute scene of like older Ramona, like basically is like, yeah, I'm still here. I was gonna leave, but I kind of wanted to see everybody.
Yeah, and they take pictures together.
Yeah, I like how she's like all like goofy in the first two, and then she tries to be serious after.
Yeah,
but then she goes away, and then Scott and Ramona immediately are in love, and I was like, okay, that was quick. It's like they didn't really have much development, but whatever.
True,
because destiny said so.
Pretty much. Well, I mean, Scott already is already like full in because he's like, oh, we get married, this and that, and he even assumed that it was him who fucked up.
Yeah, and I assume that Ramona just at this point's like, because of how much time she's put into this, she just kind of gives in. But
yeah,
then it's revealed that they have like an anti-kissing curse on them now.
Yeah, so they can't end in the canon way with the kiss.
Yeah, so they immediately think it must have been one of the evil exes, which they then go to Knives and Steven's play that they have going on because all the exes are going to be there. And I love how like when they're all like showing up at the party, they're all like completely in different places now.
Mm-hmm.
Like Todd shows up and he's just eating chicken. It's like not a vegan anymore.
Yeah, I love the whole scene with him and the butter with the popcorn.
That legit made me sick looking at it.
For real. And then Scott attacks him and he's like, you owe me eating too much butter. I mean popcorn.
Yeah. But I love how like he runs into all the exes and they're all like, no, we didn't do anything, Scott. Go away. My favorite one is the twins. He's like, we were told by the robot that we're cool in the future, so hi. And then they just walk off.
For real.
It's like okay. And even Gideon.
Oh, go ahead.
Gideon's like, he's like, Scott. It's like, I have no reason to be mad at you anymore. Like, I'm with Jules now. And it's like, so we can be friends. And he just walks off.
Also, I'm mad at Matthew Patel.
Yeah. And Matthew Patel just like blows off. He's like, I don't have time for you right now. Go away.
Yeah, it's my big night.
And also, this is where we find out that Gideon has the entire Gordon has the entire stage rig to blow up after Patel's performance.
Which I thought was really funny too, like a really funny follow up to earlier, because when he and Julie were having their whole spiel after he destroyed her house, he was like, "Oh, what if I told you that I've actually been plotting a secret plot to get back at the dude who did all this and blah blah blah." And it's like, okay, so that plot that you're plotting the whole time was just blow him up with dynamite.
Yeah,
that's what you came up with.
He's not the. He was distracted by the horny. That's what happened there. I actually really did like the stage performance, though. I thought that was pretty an entertaining spin on the events of the original series.
Yeah.
Then like just all of the exes and stuff are all sitting up in the banisters with the characters, and the whole time they're like, "Oh, hey, Scott," and they're like, "Are you guys gonna kiss?" And it's like, "Nope."
Oh, I love the whole bit with when they were doing all the red carpet like interviews and stuff, and they go up to Stacy and they're like, it's just like, "Oh yeah, Scott Pilgrim was my brother. Oh, he's alive? Well, I guess should say he is my brother."
Yeah, it's like one of the only major lines she has, and it's such a goofy line.
Yeah.
But then we get the next twist in this entire series, which I still think is I didn't see coming, but was also epic, where they get kidnapped again.
Mm-hmm.
And they all end up on this weird like asteroid. And
it's
they have
to fight even older Scott.
Yeah, it's like even older Scott. And Scott's it's like, what?
He's like not even 50 and he's all white. Like his hair and his beard. Like,
because he spent all that time training in solitude for 10 years and just becomes this fucking monster.
Right.
And I love the meta thing where it's like the ending, it's like even older Scott versus everyone.
Yeah. And like I love the whole idea of like Scott is now the 8th evil X.
Yeah, pretty much. And he has to fight all the other evil X's plus like the main cast members.
Yeah.
And that goes on for a while. Like you get a whole bunch of crazy like Evil Scott is like OP like at this point.
Oh yeah. It's like he's got like vegan powers times 10.
Yeah. But then so she's just called Ramona. Like they don't actually give her a name, but the fans just call her even older Ramona. Also, don't ask her age. And she shows up and she's like, "What the hell? Like you've disappeared for 10 years. Like what is wrong with you?"
She's like, "I just needed space." He freaked out for no reason.
Yeah.
He's like, "Well, can we get back together then?"
She's like, "No, like not after that." And it's like we get this whole like meta thing where Ramona's like goes through like how she runs away from everything she loves. And she finally made the point where she's like, I'm not running away anymore. I'm going to choose you. And she goes and hugs older Ramona and they merge into Super Ramona, like from Sonic.
From Sonic 2, I mean 3.
Yeah. That was a really good joke.
Yeah.
And then she basically just sends even older Scott away because she's like, all right, I can fix this mess eventually, or I can prevent it from happening ever. And they basically like go their separate ways, and Scott basically is like, they basically like, how do I say it? Basically, she basically finally realizes the feelings for Scott, and then they finally break the anti-kiss curse.
Yeah,
I guess, which they get back to the movie theater, and then it's like finally everything's back to normal.
Mm-hmm. And all the demon chicks had disarmed the bombs and stuff.
The demon hipster chicks, as they're called in the manual. Yeah, they've defused the bombs, and then like literally they're up on stage, and like the whole time, like Matt's like, "You were gonna blow up the stage, Gideon? Like, what the hell, man?" And he's like, "Well, you ruined my life." And he's like, "You know what? Do you want your stuff back? Because like this sucks."
Yep.
He's like, "I just want the stage play." He's like, "Fine, deal is done." And then just immediately like nothing happened.
Also, I loved all the rich asshole jokes throughout. Like, like first when Gideon's like, "Oh, my billionaire friends abandoned me. Even my millionaire friends won't talk to me." And then like later on, when Lucas Lee is like, "I'm totally broke. I can't even afford a first class flight."
Yeah, I love stuff like that. Also, the his running joke about how he's like, I have my businesses, my record label, my movie studio, my 7 orphanages, and it's like
Yeah, my 14 animal shelters.
shelters, it's all stuff like that.
Oh
But then
yeah.
we cut to the you kind of get like all these like flash reveals of like what everybody's doing now. Like all the characters have essentially been reformed in a way. Like well, at first it cuts to like Sex Bombs playing again, but now they have knives on keyboard. And
Which
because
really adds something to their band too. I like the sound a lot. I wish it was a real band.
yeah, well, it's like because it's like wow, we sound pretty good now. They're like it's all probably because of knives.
Mm.
But then her and Stills like immediately go because they're like, oh, we got a gig, and then they run off. And you kind of get a flash forward around to all the different characters. Like you see what Stills and Knives are doing. They're actually writing songs for Envy now because she's a solo act.
Mm-hmm.
You see Todd is training to be a vegan again with Roxy. Just like all sorts of stuff. Gideon and Julie are now preparing some evil plot. But,
Which like kind of made it seem like they're building up to like a follow up, but the creator said he didn't have any intention of making more. So like I gotta wonder what that's about.
well, the creator Brian Lee O'Malley said he's open to do more, but there's no plans as of now.
Okay.
Lucas Lee works at the coffee shop now, which is funny.
Yeah, he's the superstar barista.
And Stacey's like, yeah, he's kind of annoying, but I get to stare at his butt all day, so that's cool, I guess. Get that. I forget who am I forgetting?
Wallace goes to France.
Oh yeah, and he meets Mobile.
I'm assuming Nintendo guy.
That's Mobile. He's from the comics. That was his boyfriend in the comics.
Oh, okay.
I think it's implied that he's the Nintendo guy as well.
All right. Makes sense.
Yeah, there's them, and then Scott and Ramona are together now officially, and they're kind of it's kind of ends off on like this is a new universe now.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like everybody's way better off than before.
Yeah, it's like everyone just has a redemption arc, pretty much.
And I love how in the future when Scott first meets older Scott, how he's explaining how he and the twins like became cool. He's just like, oh yeah, well after I killed them and they respawned at their house, it's just like, oh okay, so all the evil exes just respawn afterwards.
Yeah.
That was just like a really casual reveal, like, oh no, none of them are actually dead. They all back at home.
I also like the little joke where like they kept the thing from the games where whenever someone gets defeated, they just turn into change, and like the counter above them starts ticking upward with how much money they got.
Yeah.
Because the scene where Matthew Patel's killing all the people at the movie studio, you just see his like change counters going up slightly the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was funny. Oh yeah, we also see that no account video closed down permanently,
which was inevitable. I'm honestly like, it was so hard to pin down like when everything was taking place because they would have things like VHS tapes and video rental stores and stuff, but then they also referenced Detective Pikachu and like later stuff.
Yeah, though, so it's supposed to be like mid 2000s because like the Netflix DVD stuff, but I don't know. It's unclear.
Yeah, it's pretty funny though.
It's Toronto. It's just a different world planet up there.
Yeah.
But overall, though, like, what'd you think of the entire series?
I mean, I liked it enough to watch it 3 times in a month. So it was definitely worth it.
It hooked me from the second it started.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally the second Scott died in the first episode, I was like, I need to know what happens next. Like,
yeah,
this entire thing is just completely a different series now.
It's a very bingeable show.
Yeah, it's super quick. 8 episodes. You finish in literally like 5 hours, I think.
And like I was saying before, the soundtrack is a banger.
Yeah, they got Anna Moniguchi back from the guys who did the game.
Mm-hmm.
They contributed to the soundtrack. There was another guy who contributed to it as well.
Oh, and I love in the ending credits of the last episode how they did like this Scott Pilgrimified Mortal Kombat theme.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
There was just a whole bunch of like meta jokes, like So much meta humor. I love the animation too. Like it looks so spot on to the comics, but also like different enough to stand on its own.
Like I wish we had like a one-to-one adaptation of the comics with this animation style. Like because it just looks so good and it flows so well.
Mm, that would be cool. I do appreciate them though trying something different because I feel like we've seen the comics so many times now. An adaptation would have been good, but like I like that they tried something different.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I would have preferred that over this. I'm just saying like as like an extra thing would have been cool.
Mm. I love too that they gave all the actors a chance to actually do more, like with their roles, other than Stacy. But that's besides the point.
Yeah, it feels like most of the characters that didn't get much in the movie got a lot more to do in the show.
They also did some great like character fixing for like Scott, like when he comes back and like he has the little he patches things up with knives and he basically makes the point he's like, you know, I probably shouldn't have dated you ever to begin with. Like that was dumb. And I'm sorry I led you on kind of thing.
Yeah. And
Like
then she thanks him for dying.
yeah. Because it revealed her actual calling in life.
Yeah. I love that she's a part of the band at the end and they're just like all like a fun little crew.
Well, I love how it's a contrast to the ending of the comic too, where because in the comics, Sex Bomb is completely disbanded, like by volume 5, I want to say, or the beginning of volume 6, and by the end of it, Scott and Kim have a new band called Scatterband, and it's Scott on guitar and Kim on drums, and they just suck. They're really bad, and I think they all comment how like yeah they're pretty bad overall, like but at least they're happy.
Yeah.
But then I like the ending of this one where it's like, hey, Sex Bomb's actually not bad now.
Yeah, right.
Like it's a nice twist on it.
I love how it ends out on the song that they started up on.
Yeah. I also love the meta joke where like they play the song the first time and they're like, you guys want to play it again? Implying that they don't have another song to play.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this is the whole the humor of Scott Pilgrim. Either you get it or you don't, but it's just such a charming thing overall.
Yeah, like I said in our first Scott Pilgrim episode, like there's the humor and the comedy and like the dryness of a lot of the Scott Pilgrim stuff just it hits me in a way that a lot of other stuff doesn't.
No, the whole thing was like literally I was like glued to the screen from like start to finish. Like it grabbed me that quick, and like honestly, like I was kind of bummed when it was over because I was like, damn, that was like too quick.
Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, it's kind of a good thing because, you know, we've all had those shows that have that really strong start and then they peter out and just never end.
Yeah, it's interesting because like sometimes it feels like you'd like a longer show, but then it like ends up just losing steam like halfway through. Meanwhile, a shorter show you feel like ends too quickly, but it's just so good from beginning to end.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like one of these moments because there was just so much subtle things like left all over the place with this.
For sure. There's a lot of like little hidden jokes and stuff throughout too.
Like how like Ramona becomes a stunt girl at the end of the show.
Yeah.
and young Neil's just driving around in his golf cart.
Yeah. Doing what he loved.
Which is great.
He didn't get to graduate to be regular Neil though.
Yeah, that was the one downside that we didn't get just Neil ever. To be fair though, he's so despite having a pretty big part in this entire series, he's so like another car. He's very like unimportant to the actual plot overall.
Well, he wrote the memoir that became the screenplay.
He wrote the memoir.
Old young Neil wrote the memoir, and then Ramona adapted it into the screenplay.
True. Very old young Neil. That's right. What a name.
It's just like a lot of those kinds of stupid jokes that just are perfect.
I love too, like the robot, like throughout the entire. I love that they made the robot from the game like who's just like a one-off boss in the game. Like they made it actually a full-on developed character in this.
Mhm.
And I love how like everyone treats him like garbage, and then Scott's like the first person that's nice to him, and he immediately becomes like buddies with Scott.
Right.
And it's implied like that he's using the robot to actually like spy on all of them in the future.
I love when he first like starts spying through it, and then he's
He's
just like
just
running into the wall like it's a video game.
the video game thing where he's like running in place, and all the people are just looking at it like, what? Also, I like how the robot's a vegan because it's never had meat. It's like, yeah, I guess technically
Oh, I guess in that sense, all robots are vegans.
they're super vegans.
Yeah,
They can do super vegan
they've
portals.
never had meat or dairy ever.
Yeah. Also, the sparks are real at the end when Wallace meets Mobile.
Hey, we didn't even talk about Tom and Wallace's fling.
Oh, Todd and Wallace's, yeah.
Yeah,
That entire like joke that ran for way too long, but was great.
yeah, right. Let's go run lads in your trailer.
Let's go do something in your trailer. And it's like, then they're like, he's like, yeah, this is where we made out on the couch. And then over here we did, it's like, we don't need to know Todd.
This is the first place I made out with Wallace. This is the second place I made out with Wallace.
Yeah. It was like, we don't need to know Todd. Yeah, I'd rather not know here personally.
It's too fun. I love that they brought back the P bar.
Yeah. That was good. Oh,
Oh,
man.
also Todd's delayed gasp. Whenever
Yeah.
whenever they have the gasp screen.
Yeah. This is so much. It shouldn't be this funny, but it just is.
It's just like this kind of like dumb casual humor. It's just perfect.
Yeah, and technically you don't have to read the comics to watch the show because the show's kind of standalone.
I mean, if anything, I'd say watch the movie and then watch the show, especially because of all the same actors and stuff. But I mean, you really don't need to.
Yeah, it stands on its own pretty well, and I think that's its strongest point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Honestly, though, other than that, I think we've pretty much covered everything. Any other things you wanted to shout out before we wrap this up, or?
Well, I was actually just on a whim. I looked up the soundtrack on Amazon. You can actually, I think it was released in April, but you can pre-order the soundtrack on vinyl for $30.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Because I know you can get the game soundtrack as well, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was actually it actually has a lot of the songs on it too. And I was looking at like the rankings. It's right now it's the number one soundtrack on Amazon, and it's number 35, I think, for CDs and vinyls in general.
It is on Spotify. It's on Spotify as well too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so I might have to dump the $30 into it to pre-order because I like collecting records, and it's the Scott Pilgrim. I want to get one for the movie and the show because I love the soundtracks on both.
Yeah, no, they did a great job overall.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think other than that though, highly recommended. I gave it I think on Annie list I gave it like an 85 out of 100.
Mm-hmm. That's a solid rating.
I might bump that up to 90, honestly.
I mean, I definitely wouldn't put it any lower.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think of flaws, and it really doesn't have any major flaws other than like it's kind of just a niche thing.
If anything, it fixes a lot of the flaws from like the pre-existing flaws from the comics and the movie.
Yeah. I guess the only real flaw is that it was kind of a bait and switch, but even then that's not really a flaw. It's more just a preference thing.
Tempering expectations.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. I mean, you go into it and you're like, oh, I thought they were going to do something different when you're watching the first episode. And then when it ends, you're like, oh, okay, so this is going to be very different.
Yeah, like extremely different. What?
But it works really well.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, other than that, though, I think that was a good episode. It was probably our shortest one we've done so far.
If not, it's definitely close.
Yeah, no, but We had said that from the start. I mean, this was mostly just a following up on the previous thing, anyways, because we said we would. So,
I mean, if we had done what we originally said and watched and had it prepared for the previous episode, then that one probably would have been like 2.5 hours. So
yeah, probably. Yeah, but this was good. It's funny how we're talking about the end of the year, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be the second episode into the next year.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because I think Pokemon is going to be coming out like the day after New Year's.
Yeah, I believe so. Oh, well, it's most podcasts are recorded in advance, so that's fine.
Yeah, we got to have a little bit of bumper just in case. You never know.
Yeah. But, all right. So, anyways, guys, once again, thanks for joining us on Geek Addicts. You can find Geek Addicts in the GNC podcast feed on all your major podcasting platforms. If you're looking for our links, you can find them at linktree/thebarberwhogames. And if you'd like, you can join the GNC Podcast Network Discord server, where you can find all things gaming and collecting, the 3DO experience, or Geek Addicts. And you can talk general nonsense, anime, gaming, whatever. And with that, guys, we will see you all later.
Have a good one.